To know me is to love me, and I love going to museums. The Houston Museum of Natural Science had a new exhibit called Death by Natural Causes, and I had to go see it. Yeah, I know it gives creepy, but it was very informative and educational. Bam, soon as you walk in the exhibit, there's a fortune teller that tells you how long you have left to live. Don't be too creeped out. It just used factors like, are you a smoker, are you a drinker, and then calculated your age. I have 47 years left. I moved right along and saw copies of Sammy Davis Jr. and John Belushi's autopsies, and then went into an exhibit that had all of the poisonous items. Some of the things were stuff you could find in your own household. Almonds, lima beans, and even the seeds from an apple could potentially be poisonous. But you know, burnt plastic is also one, but we're just filled up with microplastics, and that's a whole different story for another day. I don't want to even get into that. There was so much stuff to look at, and we had only been in the exhibit for about 5 minutes. There were skeletons and creepy crawlies all over the exhibit. Yep, that's a real live rattlesnake. This was one of my favorite parts of the exhibit, the elements of life and death. When you pressed on it, it gave you the chemical properties of something that could be potentially lethal if ingested. Was this creepy dress from the early 1900s and a death mask that they placed over you when you died after a plague. There were old vintage bottles of poison, chemicals that we used to use in the workforce that we no longer could use. That's Vincent van Gogh. They even had some real uranium salt glass on display. Can y'all believe that people used to have this in their house? They didn't even realize that it was radioactive and potentially just killing them slowly. Could you imagine putting flowers in this vase? There were fake cadavers all over the exhibit, and if you put your hand right into this little thing right here, you could figure out how they died. Now, if you're a Hufflepuff, you'll really enjoy this part of the exhibit. I definitely took my time walking through this part because I feel like one day I'm going to be stranded in the woods and I'm going to have to eat some mushrooms. And I don't want to eat the wrong ones. So I definitely took some notes. That's some old school opium pipes. And there were life-size skeletons and some taxidermied animals. This part made me kind of sad, not going to lie. Fun fact, did you know that spiders will run directly towards you when you encounter them? They think that's your shade. They think that's your shelter. And we just kill them. You guys. Matter of fact, one of them had actually passed away. This was a simulator that shows what happens to your body over the course of a time after a snake bite. It was actually insane. And after my hand got gangrene and sepsis and fell off, I decided to continue on in the exhibit. This portion of the exhibit more so focused on the plagues. Pretty wild that I didn't see anything about you guys hoarding toilet paper in 2020 during that plague, but hey, whatever. I finished up in that exhibit and then I headed right on over to the Egyptian one. I haven't been to this museum since I was legitimately a child. And it was raining outside, so I definitely decided to take advantage of the last 2 hours that they were open. Egyptian exhibits make me very uncomfortable because, like, why do y'all have all these people stuff up in here? If you don't return this back to where you got it from, and who knocked the nose off? Y'all know why they knocked that nose off, right? Right? Y'all got somebody deceased auntie's dress up in here. Return it back to sender, bro. Send all this back to Egypt. Y'all done pissed somebody off doing this. I turned a corner and I said, I know that ain't who I think it is at the end of this hallway. I just know it ain't. Could you imagine dying and then being shipped to a whole nother country and being put on display along with your body parts? Never set right with me, but that's fine. I like replicas. And that's exactly what this portion was. I had just seen the Michael Jackson movie like 3 hours before this, and I just really felt the spirit of Michael being in there. Do you remember the times with that? And then somebody walked in on me. I only had about 30 more minutes until the museum closed, so I raced on over to see the dinosaurs. I'm also really sad about this, but I'm kind of glad that they're not alive because this is scary. Side note, this is a great place to have a party or even like a wedding reception. I mean, if dinosaurs are like your thing. I raced through some precious metals and gems exhibit, oohed and awed at how pretty everything was. And then I heard a voice. I was being kicked out. But it was cool because I had to beat Houston traffic anyway. Y'all make sure you support your local science museum.